Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings as we have still got some yellow rain warnings issued over the next few days, so we are going to continue to see fairly unsettled weather. However, towards the end of the week, by Thursday, Friday time, higher pressure is going to be building in from the south, and it is going to be turning things a lot drier. Now at this stage it is looking like, at least initially, it's going to be a fairly gloomy and fairly mild area of higher pressure. We are going to see some fairly warm upper air temperatures, probably won't equate to anything crazy at the surface, but at this stage, because the air is coming around that area of high pressure, it's going to drag a lot of cloud, perhaps areas of drizzle in the north and the west, and generally average to above average temperatures over the next week or so. As we head beyond that, into the days leading up towards Christmas, we are continuing to see the possibility of some quite significant application of the jet stream. There is a massive amount of uncertainty as we have runs that just show a flat westerly, other runs that are kind of in between, showing some colder and milder air masses, and runs like the GFS operational today, which do bring in the -10 isotherm and would bring widespread ice days on the lead up to Christmas from a really potent northerly wind. Now, it is on the very low end of the ensemble members. The majority of ensemble members do go below average, but nowhere near that cold. But it is just one of those where we have to keep a very close eye on it. Very intense area of high pressure is going to be building in. And if it does push northwards, we could go very cold. But the uncertainty is with if that high pressure is going to move northwards or not. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well. The link is in the description. Now, to start on the live radar, we have got a little bit of a lull in the weather at the moment. Only a few showers, parts of Wales, England and Scotland, but elsewhere it is pretty dry. But you can see up the west, across Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, the next area of rain is moving in, and it's now fully coming into radar view, and it is going to push eastwards over the course of the evening. Hopefully most of the rain for England, Wales and Scotland falls through the overnight hours, but it could be pretty heavy, and we have got more warnings issued for this, and we are going to continue to see these areas of rainfall. There's not going to be anything too intense or anything too prolonged, but still areas of rain over the next few days before it does settle down later this week. Now, after you put on the temperatures, you can see it isn't particularly mild. It is generally cool. Some areas are probably above average across parts of England and Wales, but you can see further northwards where we are in slightly colder air, seeing temperatures drop down towards the low single digits, if not towards freezing tonight, with perhaps a little bit of a frost. But those temperatures will be brought up as that rainfall does move in. Now, if you look at the weather warnings, you can see we've got this rain warning issued for Northern Ireland. It comes into force in a couple of hours' time until 7 a.m. tomorrow for more heavy rain. Again, 10 to 15 millimetres, maybe 25 to 30 millimetres. And again, that doesn't sound too crazy, but again, we have to take into factor the rainfall that we have seen. You can see here, given recent wet weather and saturated ground, some disruption from flooding is likely. Into Tuesday, we still have that warning, as said, expiring in the morning, and then we've got a warning for eastern Scotland here into northeast England, or just about stretching into northeast England. And you can see it's from 9 a.m. tomorrow until 8 a.m. on Wednesday. For rain through Tuesday into early Wednesday may lead to some disruption and flooding in places. Again, you can see an area of rain will move in from the west on Tuesday. It is expected to become pretty slow moving and persistent in this area. 10 to 20 millimetres possible, maybe 30 to 40 millimetres. So you can see that not all areas are going to see that rain move through very quickly. Most are, but you can see here for northeast England into Scotland, the rain is going to hang around through much of Tuesday and link it into Wednesday there. Now, if you do have a look at the latest UKV to see that precipitation and, of course, the temperatures over the next 5 days, you can see as we head through this evening, we do see that heavier rain moving in from the west, initially giving lots of heavy rain for Northern Ireland and then stretching eastwards. It looks like it's going to become quite a narrow band, but be pretty intense as it does sweep eastwards, especially across England and Wales there. Into the early hours of the morning, it should move through, and for most into rush hour, the persistent rain should have cleared, apart from those northern areas, especially in that warning zone. But then we do see some heavy, maybe even thundery showers moving in from the west as the centre of the low moves in. So you see the rain turns much more scattered and less persistent, apart from that eastern and northeastern England, eastern Scotland and northeastern England point. Elsewhere becomes more scattered, the rainfall, but heavier and more potent with some squally showers. And that will dominate much of Tuesday afternoon and eventually should slowly die out through the evening, and those showers should disintegrate. And by early hours of Wednesday, we finally see the last of that rain clear, and by Wednesday afternoon, still a bit gloomy in the east, but elsewhere drier with a bit of sunshine, and perhaps turning colder as a northeasterly wind does come in temporarily. As we progress into Thursday, we see another weather front move in, giving more generally unsettled conditions, but nothing too crazy with that. And that's because the high pressure is slowly nudging in, taking all the intensity out of these lows. And you can see cloudy, perhaps gloomy and drizzly conditions arrive from Friday to Saturday, but overall pattern is going to be drier. And it is all because, if you look at the mean sea level pressure, higher pressure is nudging up from the south. You can see around 1,042 millibars to our south, so a pretty intense area of high pressure is going to be moving in. But you can see that the wind is from the southwest here. If the centre of the high got slightly further northwards, which some runs have it doing, we could see cooler conditions prevail, perhaps an inversion. But at this stage, the most likely scenario is for more of a gloom and cloud coming around the northern edge of the high pressure. It's kind of sort of the worst case scenario for this sort of high pressure. Again, with an inversion, it would be cold and frosty, but at least we'd see sunshine, and yeah, it would still be pretty dry. Whereas with this cloud and gloom, it could be drizzly and quite miserable and dark a lot of the time. And of course, falling at the shortest days of the year in terms of sunlight, it could be really quite gloomy out there as we head towards the latter parts of this week. Now, if you look at the latest temperatures, you can see through this afternoon, maybe 9 or 10 degrees in the south, so nothing crazy, but nothing particularly cold or cold either. If we do progress into Tuesday, again, could be a bit of a frost to the north, but as that rain heads in, it will turn it milder for all, and by Tuesday afternoon, we could just about see a 9 to 11 degree again in the southeast, but cooler further north and westwards as a fresher air mass is moving in. But of course, it is chopping and changing those air masses, so nothing is going to last all too long. Into Wednesday, could be much colder in the north, but further southwards, still generally more towards average 6 to 8 degrees. And then into Thursday, could see a frost overnight, but by the morning, temperatures will be rising as we do see milder air prevail. Again, looking at sort of 7 to 10 degrees there. And as we're into Friday, again, could be a bit of a frost in places, but turning quite a bit milder through Friday into Saturday, as we do see that warmer air moving round the edge of that higher pressure. And that looks like the theme, perhaps gloomy, but sort of 10 to 12 degrees through the weekend, perhaps into the last full week before Christmas. So if we do have a look at the latest GFS and see what that is showing over the course of the next couple of weeks, as I said, it is showing a real quite potent northerly wind. It is chopping and changing. Some runs are flat westerly, others are showing some real quite cold weather in the lead up to Christmas here. So you can see the westerly wind over the coming days, but high pressure moving in, trying to push northwards, but not having a lot of success as the jet stream is still trying to come in from the west. You can see though, as we head into sort of this time next week, the high pressure tries to amplify northwards. It has a good effort, and we see a really quite potent northerly wind, very cold air spread southwards, and we'll have a look at those upper air temperatures in a minute. But you can see the high pressure doesn't properly penetrate into the Arctic, which means it's a bit of a northerly toppler. So into the immediate days before Christmas, so into the 23rd and Christmas Eve, we actually see the westerly winds come back in, and for Christmas to New Year would actually be quite a bit milder. So it goes cold for a time before turning milder, because that high pressure doesn't quite turn into a full blocking pattern. And you can see here the very cold air moves in, the minus 10 isotherm gets in, and if you look at the temperature deviation, you can see it is getting towards 10 to 12 degrees below average. It is a freezing cold northerly wind. Potential equivalent temperature is very cold indeed, and if we have a look at those 2 meter temperatures, you can see widely below freezing in the day, hardly getting above freezing either. Dew points, look at that, that's more minus 10, so it is a severely cold air mass. But again, I must emphasise, this is on the peripheries of the ensemble spread. Most are going down to down below average, but not quite this cold, I must say. But it is a scenario, and we do need to keep an eye on it. Again, it's not a prolonged cold spell. It is a toppler, so it's lasting maybe 3 or 4 days at best. But nevertheless, it could be quite a potent pattern into the lead up to Christmas. If you compare it to the GEM, which is kind of in between, it doesn't show a flat westerly, but it doesn't show a real potent northerly wind either. Again, westerly winds coming over the coming days, high pressure builds in, and that's where all the models will get to. But as we head into following week, this is where we could start to see cooler conditions. And you can see here, as we towards day 10, we do see a bit of a northerly wind, nowhere near as amplified, but you can see the -5 isoberg moves through, so a day or two of generally below average temperatures, pretty chilly, maybe even some wintry showers and some frosts into the days leading up to Christmas, but eventually it looks likely that the high pressure will topple and it will turn milder. But at least for a couple of days we are below average, potentially well below average, in especially the east. So GM similar, going for a northerly wind, going for colder air moving in for a couple of days, but nowhere near as potent as the GFS. Now, if you compare it to the ECMWF, which is just updating, so I haven't actually had a look at it out to day 10 yet. Again, westerly winds coming in, high pressure builds in, the high pressure nudges northwards, trying to build that northerly wind, and at day 10, it actually does look pretty encouraging for a real potent northerly to arrive into the few days prior to Christmas. So it's not the same time frame as the GM or the GFS, it's a different area of low pressure and a different timing for the amplification. But nevertheless, if we look at those upper air temperatures, you can see at day 10 it is relatively mild here, but you can see that air is about to exit out of the Arctic. Very cold pool of air there towards southern Greenland, and it would be about to plunge. And you can see this very strong northwesterly wind here that would turn into a northerly as this high pressure slowly ridges northwards. So you see those ice bars backing up this back edge towards the back edge of this low, so it would go into a potent northerly wind, probably pretty similar to the GFS. Again, we'd have to look at the intensity nearer the time, but a very similar pattern. So definitely is looking scope for quite a potent northerly wind as we head towards the Christmas period. Not a prolonged cold spell, not likely to deliver widespread snow or anything like that. Locally, could see heavy showers, things like that, and could see some quite harsh frost, and you never know what could happen with it. But it's not a sort of classic cold spell that would develop widespread white Christmas or anything like that. But it could be cold, could be wintry, and it is one to keep a very close eye on. Of course, some weather patterns, long-term weather patterns, are suggesting a colder spell. This could be sort of the lead up to it. These could be the starting signs of the models starting to pick up on it. But we can't be sure until we start seeing that in proper output. And probably for the last sort of few days, we haven't seen any sort of sustained cold spells at the end of the runs. Lots of these sort of northerly topplers, few days of cold, potent Arctic air, but nothing sustained at this stage. Now, if you do have a look at the latest GFS ensembles here, you can see generally up and down over the next couple of days, and then well above average into next week, and staying well above average for about 5 days. Temperature at the surface won't be that mild. They probably will still be average to above average, but not quite that mild, but it will be very dry, and that will be the most noticeable part of it. Beyond that, as we get into these sort of 3 to 5 days before Christmas, this is where we are likely to see colder air coming back in. Whether it's a bit of a transient northwesterly or a proper potent northerly wind, the majority of runs do bring us back below average. And you see the GFS there, one of the colder runs, getting us down to the -10 line. Again, there are maybe 5 or 6 others that do a similar pattern, but again, it's nowhere near the majority at all. But you see precipitation picks up, colder air masses moving in, so definitely looks a possibility of seeing at least winteriness return for northern areas, maybe in the south if we do see that proper potent northerly move in. But for London, we need to see the -5 line move in, at least that, if not towards the -10, to be seeing any winteriness. And then you can see if we do cut off this, only a few runs get down towards -10, and very few stay below -5 for more than a couple of days. So we will just have to see, but at this stage definitely looks like it's been turning cooler from the GFS ensembles, but at this stage can't say much more than that. Dew points, again, looking much colder in the longer term. And again, all those dew points go down to -5 and below will be from real quite potent air masses, very dry Arctic air masses, most likely from the north. We're not really seeing any hints of anything coming from the east at this stage, but definitely coming from the north, and that could be really quite potent. So a lot of runs showing northerly winds there. And you can see with the sea level pressure, big rise and then potential drop in the longer term as lower pressure could return. 2 metre temperatures, again, you're not seeing a massive rise in the next sort of week or so with those 2 metre temperatures. Still probably slightly above average under the higher pressure, but not massively warm either. And longer term, a lot of spread. Some runs 10 to 12 degrees, still bringing in westerly winds. Other runs, like the operational run, down towards the freezing mark. In the daytime, that is, as we do see northerly winds. Now, to compare to the Eastern WF, we can only have a look at the midnight run because the midday run hasn't fully come out. And it seems longer term, we're pretty much around average, slightly above, slightly below. So Eastern WF has much less confident in a cold air mass moving in. There are some very cold runs there, but at this stage, nowhere near as much confidence. A lot more scatter in the long term. Basically meaning the ECMWF is not confident in it at all, but not really confident in any scenario, to be honest. Again, I have seen this quite often through the winter and the autumn. The GFS is always a little bit more bullish with a pattern. Sometimes it comes off, sometimes it doesn't. Definitely the colder spell we saw towards the end of November, that was definitely shown more from the GFS ensembles and definitely wobbled more on the Eastern WF. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean the GFS was correct. At those moments, the Eastern WF could be picking up on a background pattern that didn't really come to fruition in the end. But it's just one of those where I wouldn't take either ensemble member as gospel. Eastern WF, yes, it's not showing major cold or any major cold northerly flows. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. Vice versa, GFS definitely looks a lot more confident with a colder northerly flow, but again, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. We'll have to wait to see more agreement from the models, and I do suspect we'll have a much better idea as we progress through this working week, and probably by the weekend, we'll have a decent idea what sort of overall pattern we'll be seeing for Christmas. Again, no specifics, but whether we're going to see a massive northerly wind or not, we will probably know with a fair degree of confidence by this weekend if that could happen. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. If you're looking forward to some dry weather, definitely looking better later this week. Yes, we'll be quite gloomy, at least initially, but thankfully it will be drier. And of course, we're heading towards Christmas now, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens with these runs. So as I said, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.